do that. All right, let me stop and check in with everyone. Questions before we move forward? If you have any questions, you're welcome to pose those now. If you don't have any questions, you can either tell me in chat or you can give me the good old red thumb down from the hands up pod. Just give me a red thumb down. Hearing a lot of raspberry sounds out there. Can I specify 1, 2, 3 again, Siva? So can you see them on the board? Pay codes must exist first. Then accrual codes, dates, and then date patterns. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clear everything. And let's go ahead and move along to the next page. So go ahead and look at page 3. This is going to be PDF 5. Our case study, we're going to use our good friends at MVP Athletics, just a fictitious sporting goods company operating in the U.S. and Canada. They offer several accrual-related benefits to employees, and we're going to be looking at accrual policy for a sales associate and for managers. And then our various personas that are mentioned here. Good old Sean Ivan. Perhaps you've met Sean before. Sean is going to do our system admin work. Holly's kind of always my change management manager. And the reason I say that is because Holly has access to the people record and a lot of times can provide profile information to Sean Ivan because Sean doesn't have access to the people record. We have Linda Hudson, who's an HR manager. We won't be logging in as her. We have Helen Martin, who is a store manager. We will log in as Helen. She'll be doing a little check on Michael Martin, our department manager. And we have a couple of employees that are sales associates, Patricia and Mabel Edwards, and I don't think they're sisters. So to be clear, you'll log in as Sean Ivan or Helen Martin or Holly Ivan in this class. And the password for all of them, automate 1, exclamation mark. So let's go ahead and talk about some typical changes that you might be called upon to do. Maybe you need to add a new accrual type, modify a probation period, a grant, a taking increment or a carryover limit, policies, or profiles. And we'll touch a little of these throughout this class. So there's nothing like rolling our sleeves up and just getting after it. Let's take a look at lesson 1. This is going to be your printed page. I believe it's 5, yep. And it's electronic or PDF page 7. Our first lesson is going to be administering MVP Athletics Sales Associates sick time accrual policy. A little bit of a storyline to help us get going. Part of benefit policies, MVP Athletic grants sick time to all employees who work 20 or more hours per week. So this is going to give you a little exposure to adjusting probation periods, taking increments, carryover, and grants for sick time accrual benefits. Our guide me says because of sick time benefit abuse, oh no, by our sales associate employees, MVP Athletics, they're going to crack the whip. They're going to get a little tough. They've decided to implement a sick time probation period for the sales associates to 60 days from date of hire. Now, after they work 60 days, then the sales associates will be able to use their sick time benefits, and Sean Ivan is going to implement a 60-day date pattern for use in the probation period. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and log in as Sean Ivan. Your password, again, is automate1, exclamation mark. Okay, so I am going to share my tenant as well. Let me bring it into view for you. So if you have dual monitors, you're kind of in a good shape because you can see what's going on my screen and yours. For those of you that have one monitor, I really want you to just focus on your tenant. You know, come over into the classroom if you need, but I would prefer you to focus on your tenant. All right, so you should be seeing my screen, and I'm still monitoring chat. I'm going to ask you to go to the main menu, top left, give that a click, and drop down to Administration to Application Setup. And that will bring you out to the Application Setup page. All those blue bars that you're seeing are referred to as folders. Sometimes you'll hear them referred to as groups. And I'll be honest with you, I interchange that quite often. But on the left-hand side in My Training Tenant, you'll find the Accruals folder. Go ahead and click on it to expand it. And there are all the various accrual items, and the build from the bottom up approach would start at accrual codes. Now for us, okay, for us, we're going to be starting working with the probation period. Okay, that's where our exercise begins, administering a 60-day date pattern that will be used for our probation period. But I want to say something before we begin. Folks, a lot of times you don't need to recreate the wheel. In other words, a lot of times you can take an existing building block, like a date pattern, and you can copy and tweak the copy, or perhaps you can change the original. But there's something you need to know that they don't really cover in the book, and it's really quite important. Building blocks can be shared. What I mean is that you might create a 60-day date pattern that's used for probation periods. It's used with, let's say, a couple of different policies. Okay? You might have a 60-day probation period that is applied on a sick accrual policy and on a vacation accrual policy. So if you change the 60-day probation period, meaning to just impact your sick policy, if that building block is used on another policy, you change one, you change both. So you do have to be mindful of if a building block is utilized on more than one policy. And that's the big gotcha with working with accruals. All right, for us, I would like for you to go to Date Patterns and give it a click. And I'm going to go a little more into that as we're talking. There is, and I'll be sharing that as we get a little more into it. So thanks, Siva, asking great questions. Wants to know, is there a place to see where building blocks are used? A great tool is to run an accrual policy report and then search the report for the name of the building block and see the policies that it's used on. So that would be your answer. I'll just go ahead and give that to you now. An accrual policy report. Of course, you have to have access to it. Did that answer your question, Siva? You're welcome. All right. I have a lot of different date patterns. Go ahead and click on New. And you see the date pattern editor. Now, this is a building block. So as far as naming is concerned, name a building block for what it does. Name a policy for who it represents. That's kind of the standard or the recommended practice. Now, of course, it's your call, but typically building blocks name them for what they do and a policy for who they represent. In the name, we're going to call it 60 days from DOH, from date of hire. 60 days from date of hire. Okay? Now the reference date, let's talk a little about that reference date. Okay? You can see it says date of hire. But the reference date is the start date for the date pattern. And it can be a person-specific date or it can be a site-wide date. We're going to leave that at the date of hire. The frequency is the length of your date pattern or how often it occurs. So a numeric value and then a unit of time. So for us, we're going to do 60 in the numeric field and leave it set at days. And your start of reference date, the pattern starts on the reference date. We're going to leave the option at the start of the reference date, so meaning on your date of hire, and the 60 days out, but there are 4 options. There's start of reference date, start closest to the reference date. So the pattern starts on the date closest to the reference date. An example might be you specify the first of the month and the reference date's January 20th and the first date would be like February 1st. The start closest to the reference date. Um, I said that one. Start on or before the reference date. So maybe you specify the 15th of the month. Your reference date is January 20th. The first date would be, say, January 15th. Or it could be on or after a reference date. I want the pattern to start on the reference date or the closest date after the reference date. So again, if I specify like the first of the month and the reference date is January 10th, then the first date would be like February 1st. As to offsets, a date pattern that can be used to advance or delay the first date of my date pattern. And you either select before or after a number and then a unit of time. Okay, so if I use an offset of before, what you're asking the system to do, okay, is you're asking the system, sorry, I heard someone's phone disconnect. Are you okay out there? I hope you're all right. Okay, good. So I'm talking about the offsets. If I use the offset of before, I'm asking the system to advance. Move my first date for the date pattern backward or before the date that's listed. So kind of think of it as you're advancing them an accrual. It's almost like a cash advance. That's a good way to think of it, but you're doing it with time. So the date pattern's giving them an advance of time. And an example might be maybe as a sign-on bonus or, hey, come work for us type of initiative, right? If you use an offset of after, think of it as delaying. Okay, delaying. You're asking the system, move that first date forward, delay the date pattern out into the future. Okay, so say for instance, I give all my employees 10 hours of vacation time each month, and of course depending on how long they've been with my company. However, employees getting hired after the 15th of the month, I want their date pattern delayed an additional month. So meaning if you start April 15th through, say, the 30th, then your first pattern, you shouldn't get it on May 1st because you're hired late in the month. So therefore, I want your pattern to start on June the 1st. So those are what offsets are about, delaying or advancing. Now for us, we're not going to use those, but since they're there in the editor, they are definitely worth mentioning. And of course, full-time equivalency, you know, the number of hours that a full-time is expected to work within a time interval defined by my date pattern. And the value that you enter is used for prorating fixed grants for part-time employees. We're not going to use any of the other options in this particular exercise. So if you'll go ahead and at the top do the combination save and return and validate that you see the 60 days from date of hire. Okay? So we have a date pattern. Now what we want to do is we want to put together the probation period. So if you'll go ahead and rather than go back out to the main menu, You can go to the top left and give that little house icon a click. That'll bring you back out to application setup. Your accruals are um, still expanded, and we're going to move up to probation period. So again, realize that for us, my pay codes already exist, my accrual codes exist. Okay, I have dates in the system. So everything's in place for us. What happens when expected hours are not met in FTE in date pattern section? Well, it is going to, of course, depend on the value that you set, and it's also addressed in the people record, right? What the FTE is for full-time and part-time, and it can be represented by a percentage or it can be represented by a ratio. So it might be that I say 40/20 for full-time, part-time, or it might be I say 100% versus 50%, again, full-time for part-time. And it's, again, prorating for the part-time employee. So it can impact their grants. Um, they might even catch more hours than usual. So it's a bigger question than what you're kind of asking me, but to help you out a little bit, kind of touch on it some. Does that help to some degree, Sharat? To some degree? And I can talk a little more with you uh, one-on-one or via email. In fact, I might just address that in an email to one and all. Okay, be happy to do that. All right, where were we headed? We were going to probation periods. So from your accrual folder, go ahead and click on probation periods. And let's talk a little about probation periods. Probation periods simply specify when accrued time or money can be used within a specified time period. Now, as far as within Workforce Dimensions, you can have a single type of probation period, or you can have a recurring. So single is one and done. That's really the way to think of it. Single probation periods occur one time. Time or money is vested, can't use it, but when the probation ends, then that time or money is available immediately and continues to be available. A recurring is a probation in which another probation period begins when a prior probation period ends. So maybe I have an employee that's earning time, say, between January and, let's say January 1 and June the 30th. Time can't be taken until July 1st. If the employee earns time between July 1 and December 31, time can't be taken until January 1. So the accrued time is going to appear as a section of time when the probation period ends. You see, I have a few out there. I have a question for you. I've got a 180 days probation period. I've got one out there that says 90-day probation period. Could we take one of those single probation periods that say 90 days and just tweak it to say 60? What do you think? What do you think? Jennifer says probably. Siva says duplicate it, probably need to duplicate it. Kathy just went with no, and a few others, perhaps the one that's for hire. And David says just make a new one. Jana says no because it might affect another policy. There you go. There you go. Remember, these are building blocks. They may be used on other policies. And since the focus of this class isn't checking out the other policies but doing the building, we always have to keep that in the back of our mind. You know, we could potentially take one and duplicate it, but it's a rather simple editor. So let's click on New. And for the editor, we need to give it a name. We're going to call it 60-day probation. 60-day probation. It will be a single probation period, and the probation will end after 60 days from date of hire. Can anyone tell me what the 60 days from date of hire is? Anybody recognize that? Yeah, that's your date pattern. You got it. That's your date pattern. We're already using it. Good job. Now let me mention something else. Look down at the bottom. We're not going to utilize these, but you can put qualifiers on a probation period. Okay? There are 4 different qualifiers that you can utilize, but they test for specific conditions, like the number of days worked before we end a single probation period. By the way, qualifiers are not available on recurring probation periods, just single. But the qualifier is going to be the number of days associated with the type of qualifier that you select that says this is what's required to complete the probation period successfully. Okay, so I might have an amount of 60 with a qualifier for days active, and that means you have to be active for 60 days before the probation can qualify. All right, and you can use a pay code. You might notice hours in a pay code, but you can only use a pay code when the qualifier is hours in the pay code. So if you choose like days worked, you see it still shows the pay code column, but it's only available when you do hours in a pay code. As to the period to check, that's how often should the system check to determine whether that probation period qualifier has been met or not. So, you know, I might put in there, say, 3 months. So the system would check every 3 months. As to the total range of time, that's the entire length of time you selected in your period to check to meet the probation period requirement. And then on the minimum occurrence, you can, if you enter more than one, you can specify whether that time period can be in any order or if it has to be consecutive. So again, we're not going to use qualifiers in this, but that lets you know a little about some of qualifiers that you can use. So this is called 60-day probation, single, and it is going to end after 60 days from date of hire. I've got one more thing I want to add, though. Some of you might go, oh, well, hey, what if we do 330 days from date of hire? Nope. Nope. Don't do that. Let me tell you for why. Sounds like it would work, but the problem is that not all months are equal, right? Some months have 30 days, some have 31, 28, and if it's a leap year, 29 days. So what we want is a continuous counter. I want the system to count for 60 days from your date of hire. But if I do 330 days, then that counter is going to tick off after 30 days and start again. And what if the next month is 31 and it throws it out of whack? Okay, so you've got a counter that we want to be continuous for 30 days rather than that behind-the-scenes counter starting and stopping at different times according to the number of days in a month. All right, go ahead and make sure you've done the save and return and then validate that you see that 60-day probation period. All right, so far so good. If you're following along in the book, we're moving to page 6 or PDF 8. And as the system admin, Sean is going to construct the MVP Athletic Sales Associate Accrual Policy with our new date pattern and probation period. But what we're going to do is duplicate a policy. Go to your home icon at the top left, give it a click. Okay, not the main menu, the little house. And move to Accrual Policies. Go ahead and choose that from your accrual folder. I have quite a few policies. The one we're looking for is MVP Athletic Sick. It's actually going to be on page 2. So if you scroll down a bit, I've actually got 6 pages of policies. We're going to go to page 2. They're listed alphabetically. Find MVP Athletic Sick and check off the little box and then go up to your button and click Duplicate. Anytime you duplicate, it's going to add the words copy of. So certainly we're going to change the name. I'm going to get rid of the words copy of. Go ahead and get rid of that. And I'm going to squeeze it in there, but it's going to be called MVP Athletic Sales Associate Sick. Sales Associates Sick. Now, this is new. I want to talk about this. So as of our release 4, in the policy you have a new field, version effective date. Okay, version effective date. So let me talk about that just a little. Not addressed in the book, so I want to be sure and bring a little extra flavor to the dining room table. You can create multiple versions of an accrual policy using effective dating. All attributes of the accrual policy can be versioned except for the policy name, just so you know. And use your version effective date fields to create accrual policy versions. But let's talk a little bit more. Okay, If you want to create a new version of the accrual policy, then you choose the Create New Version Effective, and you enter the effective date, or you select a date using the calendar. If you're just updating an existing version, then we go with the Update This Version button. So here's kind of the way I think of it, and hopefully this will help you out a little bit. And this comes back from some HR background for me. If in doubt, always go with create a new version, if in doubt. But I use the update, okay? I use the update if if I find that I've made an error. Maybe down in the grants, I made a typo. I should have put 8 hours and I did 18. So I'll use update if I made a typo or it is a change to the existing policy. But if in doubt, create a new version with an effective date. All right, for us, what you're doing at the moment on the policy is we're going to change out the probation period. Okay? Probation period. Change that to your 60-day probation. And we're going to create this new version effective because this is a brand new policy. Okay? We'll be doing that. So notice it says version effective dates right above the button. Click that drop down arrow. Is it going to let us on this one? Hang on just a second. So it should be probation period 60-day probation. The accrual code is SICK, MVP Athletic Sales Associate. And question, comment, go ahead. Jill?
Yeah, so this is a
Oh,
brand new
duh.
policy. Why we update?
Yeah,
Why we update?
duh. You're right. I had a brain cramp. I had an absolute brain cramp. Okay? Um, but we would not update a brand new version. We would do a create. But the issue is, for me, I don't know if you good folks, I can't do create a new version. It's not giving me the option. Is it giving you? No. All right. So, yeah, there we go. Me neither. So for the time being, go ahead and do save and return. Just do a save and return. And validate on that second page that you can see it. Your MVP Athletic Sales Associate SICK. And I'm going to go back in and look at it. And now when I get in there, and I'll have to check with my folks that take care of our tenants for class. Now that I'm back in the policy, I see that its version effective date says the beginning of time till forever, and I would be able to create a new version effective, say, today's date. So that was a little odd that we couldn't be doing it. So Silva, I was trying to not update, but create a new version. And there for a second, I even got kind of twisted around on that. I think that might be a little bit of a hiccup in my tenant. I'll check in on that, though. But once we go back in the second time, then um, those options are available to us. If you're back in the policy, that's a good spot to be. Okay, MVP Athletics, well, they've decided that when taking sick time, the sales associates, the smallest amount that they can take is 2 hours, and anything after that will be 2 hours. So in the policy itself, scroll down below the pay code takings section. Scroll down, you see the takings section, and it shows all these different pay codes in an available column. All right, right below it, the minimum taking right now is 1. Change that to a 2, and the taking increment to a 2. So what we're saying is if you want to take sick time, the smallest you can take is 2, and anything after that is in 2-hour increments. So you can have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so forth, but not a half or 1 or 1.5. Now let's scroll back up to the top, and for our policy on this one, we'll create this new version effective today's date. Let's do that. So today is May the 8th, and I'm going to do a save and return. And if I look at page 2, there's my MVP Athletic Sales Associate Sick Policy. And if I pop back into it, the version effective date is showing from 5/8 to forever. And now anything that we do to it from here on, we will simply update it. Let's talk about carryover limits. So still on page 6, this is PDF 8. MVP Athletics, they've decided the sales associates can't carry over unused sick time at the beginning of the new year. So we're going to adjust the amount of the carryover limit to 0 hours. Wow, they're really just getting tough with these guys, aren't they? You're going to come down to the limits on the policy, the limits section. And you see that I've got this U.S. Manufacturing carryover limit January 1. And if I look over to the right, it's been set at 80. Well, we're going to change that to a 0. Okay, so the carryover, what we're doing is we are simply saying that that balance, we're ensuring the accrual balance doesn't carry over from one time interval to another by more than a specific amount. So we've set it at 0. Okay, let's stay in the policy. So this time, up at the top, I'm just going to ask you to click Save, and let's make sure, of course, that we are just updating the version. Updating this version and hitting Save. Okay, so let's talk about grants. Okay, grants say how and when an accrual balance is credited. So there are fixed grants and there are earned grants. A fixed grant is going to define periodic accrual increases in preset amounts, where an earned grant is going to use one or more earning pay codes, and that would be its basis for calculating the amount that we credit the accrual balance. Okay, so for us in the grant area, we're going to say that they get 4 hours granted monthly on the 1st. Monthly on the 1st. Change that 8 to a 4. And we're going to leave that date of hire grant as 8. So scroll back up to the top, ensure that you're updating the version, and do a save. All right, so we've worked a little with the probation period. We've talked about the versions. We've looked at grants and limits. In the grants and limits, I want to kind of speak for just a moment about tiers or milestones. So you can use those tiers or milestones, which are a length of reference. It's to help you to specify, you know, the longer an employee has been with the organization, uh, their grant might improve. They get a service award improvement. So maybe if, let's just say, I've got David, who's been with my company from, let's say, from 0 to 4 years. David's grant is 5 hours of vacation, first of each month. But after he's been with my company from 5 to 9 years, his service award improves. So maybe it goes from 5 to 10. And then after he's been with the company from 10 or more years, maybe it increases to 20 years, 20 years. That's pretty good, isn't it, David? To 20 hours per month. So a tier or milestone, you can utilize those on your policy. Now, I need to let you know about something about that length of service reference, though. It's nothing more than a common date pattern, first off. Consequently, it must apply to both the grants and your limits, but they're used, again, they establish that length of service milestone in your editor. Okay, an important note. Okay, you can mix your grants. So what I mean by that is that you could have a monthly grant, you could have yearly grants on your policy, but you cannot mix your length of service. Meaning once you start measuring in months, you have to keep measuring in months. So you couldn't come in and say at let's say 5 years of service, if you're measuring in months, you would have to say 60 months. And that's a big gotcha. So your length of service is either measured monthly or yearly, and no mixing is allowed. That's on your length of service. The other thing I want to mention, and it's not brought to your attention in the material, but worth pointing out to you, is the accrual for overflow field. Okay, the accrual for overflow field. So let me tell you what that is about. That little bucket there is a little bucket that will hold time or money that's lost to a carryover limit, an earning limit, or both. Okay? That's what that can be used for. carryover limit, an earning limit, or both. All right. So a few extra notes to give you there. Let's go ahead and take a look at our accrual profile. Make sure that you have saved your work. If not, no harm, no foul in trying again. Just make sure that you are updating the version and do a save. You can go back to your house icon, give it a click, and we're going to drop back out into Setup and choose Accrual Profiles. We're taking a look at the profiles, okay, and we have one already out there. So listed alphabetically, you are looking for MVP Athletics accrual profile. They're listed alphabetically. MVP Athletics accrual profile. Just go ahead and click on the name. It'll open the editor. I want you to take a look at the policies that are assigned in this profile. Now remember, we're doing this for the sales associates, okay? Not managers, but sales associates. Now, can we use this profile and assign it to, say, Mabel or Patricia Edwards, an employee, without making any changes? Take a look at the policies that are listed that govern how anyone assigned this profile takes and earns sick, vacation, personal, FMLA, leave tracking, military caregiver. Take a look at all of those policies. Could we just assign this to one of our sales associates and just clap our hands together and say done? Jennifer says no. Why not, Jennifer? Why not? What's wrong with it? Jennifer's got it. She says it's not the correct sick policy. And so does Siva. So correct. It's not the correct sick policy. Can you just go ahead and change this profile? Why or why not? Exactly. Because it would affect people who are not sales associates. Exactly. So what we're going to wind up doing is we're going to duplicate this profile and give it a good name, and then we'll change out our sick policy. Now, before we head off to do that, though, okay, just so that I make sure that I cover all the bases with you, the profile enables you to group different accrual policies, assign them to one or more employees, okay? We assign them in the people information, okay? We will do that. And the other thing, notice that the policy can be visible or hidden. So let's talk just a little about that. I could hide a policy, attach it in your profile, and let's say that I've got, and I'm going to throw out an odd example here. Let's say I've got overtime as an accrual code, and I've got a policy for overtime, an accrual policy for overtime, but I've got it hidden on the accrual profile. So what that simply means, you're not going to be able to see the overtime accrual code. So you know what? Sad to say, Brenda, but if you've only worked 32 hours this week and you're short 8, no, you're not going to be able to look at your overtime accrual code balance and say, well, that's okay. I've got 10 hours of overtime. I'll just use 8. That way my check will still be 40 hours and it'll be pretty good because 8 hours of overtime. Woo-hoo. No, no. If I hide a policy, you can't see it in your accrual code balances. So therefore, you cannot make edits against it. Okay? So policies can be visible or they can be hidden. If they're visible, we will see them provided we have access rights to see the accrual add-on in our time card. Okay, we will see them there. I'm going to ask you to click return. You're back out at the list of your profiles. This time you're going to check off MVP Athletic Accrual Profile. Check it off and go up to the top and duplicate. And as before, remember anytime we duplicate, it adds the words copy of. So we're going to change that to be MVP Athletic Sales Associates Accrual Profile. MVP Athletic Sales Associates Accrual Profile. And then from that first drop down, we're going to change out MVP Athletic SIC to our MVP Sales Associates SIC. And they're listed alphabetically. Make sure it's visible. And let's go ahead and do a save and return. All right, now at this point, that profile needs to be assigned to Mabel Edwards. And remember, Sean Ivan doesn't have access to the people record. By the way, I'm on page or PDF 9 if you're viewing electronically, down at the bottom. At the top of your screen, you've got an accrual profile tab at the top. Go ahead and close that. Click that X to close it. Okay, that'll take you back down to Sean's home page. And now from the main menu, go ahead, give it a click and sign out. Make sure, always make sure when you go to sign in to Workforce Dimensions that you are viewing just one tab up at the top. It can make a mell of a hess of things, as I like to say. All right? It can really mess up your configuration, and it can also skew information. You can maybe look at your control center bill, and it might say something like you've got 117 exceptions or notifications that need your attention, when in reality maybe it's just 5. So always make sure you've just got that one log on screen. You're going to sign in as Holly Ivan. Holly Ivan. And once you are logged in as Holly, from the main menu, drop down to Maintenance, People Information. Don't worry about the error that you're getting on the Manage Schedule tile. Expected to see that. Don't worry about it if you are seeing it. Go to maintenance, drop to people information, and once you're in the people information, at the moment you're viewing Eliza Adams' people record. Happens to be the first person in the list. Right above Eliza's name, though, is a blank cell, and I'm going to type in Edwards. And it's real easy for me to see. There's Mabel Edwards. I'm going to choose Mabel Edwards' name, give it a click on that little block, and now I'm looking at Mabel Edwards' people record. Scroll down below the summary. You see a category called Employee. Let's go past that, past timekeeping, scheduling to accruals, and expand accrual information. The accrual profile, the employee is assigned MVP athletic accrual profile. Nope, no longer. So what we're going to do, see the ending date? It says ending date forever. Sorry, nope. Go ahead and click on that end date field, and you'll get a calendar, and you'll also see forever being 1/1/3000. Now what we're actually going to do is we're going to end date it for yesterday. A lot easier just to type it. So let's see, yesterday was the 7th, was it not? So 05/07/2019. I think my number lock was off. And I don't know about you good folks, but I always have a little trouble getting started. 05/07/2019. And on my new line, just below MVP Athletic Accrual Profile, I'm going to click the drop-down arrow, and I'm going to choose that new MVP Athletic Sales Associates Accrual Profile. They're listed alphabetically. Start date going to be today till forever. And on the forever date, you can click the little calendar icon, and there's a little checkbox for forever, which we know is 1/1/3000. Now, once you've done that, you can go ahead and do a save at the top right. And what you've done, this is actually called point-in-time record keeping. Okay, this policy is effective today moving forward, the other policy from the beginning of time through yesterday. The other thing you could have done, just so you know, we could have actually deleted that row, but then you wouldn't have any history about the accrual profile that governed the employee's earnings and takings. We wouldn't have known anything about that. So you have to kind of decide, is the history important to you or not? With the profile snugly in place, you can go to the top left and sign out as Holly. There's not an additional tab because you weren't out on setup. So just sign out. And what we're going to do is test. Okay, let's give it a little test. You're going to log in as Michael Martin. Michael's the department manager, and Mabel reports to him. So sign in as Michael Martin, and of course the password remains automate1. Sorry, automate1 with the exclamation mark. Now what we're going to do is go take a look at Mabel's time card. We're going to test it out a little bit. So from your main menu, drop down to time, to employee time cards, and this is going to take you out to the employee time card landing page. Employee time card landing page. Find Mabel Edwards' name. Not too far down the list, so no need to filter for it. Just give it a click on her name, and that'll open the time card. But we do want to ensure that we're looking at the current pay period. So top center, of course, employee time card, and just a little to the right, you're viewing previous pay period. Give that a click and change it to current. Now that policy is effective as of today, right? Today going forward. So for giggles, let's go to Friday. Go to Friday, May the 10th in the time card grid. Come across to the pay code column. Give that a click 2 times and you can get that little drop down arrow. Choose sick, and in the amount I want you to type a 1. Just type a 1. I'm going to type that 1 and tab out of it, and at the top right I'm going to attempt to save it. It didn't let me save it, and it shouldn't have allowed you to either. In fact, you should have gotten an error. The nice thing is that the error tells you why you couldn't save it. See a few people typing. You didn't get an error. All right, so if you did not get an error, but did you, first off, you tried to apply sick, make sure you were in the current pay period. And I just said go ahead and go to like May the 10th on that row. Come over to the sick, to the pay code and choose sick and put in 1 hour. So was all of that correct? Had you done all of that, Kim? Anything that maybe you missed? Yes? All right. So, folks, let's troubleshoot this for Kim or anyone else who did not see the error. What would you check on if you didn't get the error that you couldn't make the 1 hour edit? Where would you check? Sherrod says, taking increments in your accrual policy. All right, did it save it, Denise? Yeah, it would have, and it does that. It moves to the next empty line down, but it saved it, and you also did the 1 hour for sick time. All right, so Sherrod is absolutely correct. You would check your accrual policy. Okay, you would go back and you would look at your sales associates sick accrual policy and make sure that in the taking increment, remember we set it for 2. We set it for 2. That's the smallest amount you can take. So I was denied my edit. You should have been denied yours. So Kim, that's where I would send you back to. Don't worry about doing it now, but make yourself a note to check on that once you're back in as Sean Ivan. Okay? All right, folks, 1 didn't work. If I go back to May the 10th and I leave the sick pay code And on the amount, I change it to a 3, and I click out of the cell and try to save it, I should get an error on that as well. Edit can't be made. 6 increments have to be in 2-hour increments. So 2 is the smallest, and then 2 for the increments. Anything after the smallest amount is satisfied. So you know what this does? That's confirming that my policy is correct on the taking and the increment settings on the policy. The other thing that we want to check is our carryover configuration. So you can still stay in Mabel's card, but go up to your time period at the top, and Kim, you can continue. You can try this out also. By the way, I'm just going to delete my pay code edit there on the 10th. I'm going to just get rid of that. And I clicked save. So that way I won't get another error, and because I'm on to test my next configuration. All right, up at the top, you're looking at the current pay period. Give that a click and drop down to select range. Now, it brings up, of course, May 2019 calendar, and what we want to do, we're going to check the carryover, because we said that the sick accrual balance at the end of the year into next year, the carryover is set at 0. So we want to check that on our policy and make sure it's configured correctly. On the start and the end date, don't address those just yet. Click on May 2019, literally the name of your calendar. Give that a click, and it shows you all the months for 2019. So it makes it a little faster getting there. You can choose December, and I'm going to do December 31st for my start date. And for my ending date, I'm going to go with the 2nd of 2020, and then just click apply. So you got your date set. All right. I'm going to click on 12/31 in the time card grid. Literally, I'm going to click that date, and I'm going to go down to the Accruals add-on at the bottom and see what the sick accrual balance is. And I notice mine says 124 hours. While this person's never sick. That's pretty awesome. I'm going to click on January 1 in the time card grid, and I'm going to look at the sick accrual balance at what's available. And it says 4. Now I have a question for you. How do I have 4 hours if my carryover was 0? Anybody have any idea about that? Yeah, there's no fooling you folks. There was also actually a grant that happened as well on the 1st of the month, so good for you. But you know what? That validated our configuration. So I'm going to pop over into the classroom, and I want to kind of spot check on you good folks. I don't want you to answer in text chat. I'm going to give you a whiteboard. So if you just have one monitor, if you can make it back over to the classroom for just a moment, let's just kind of spot check on you. There's a whiteboard showing in the classroom, and on the left-hand side, there's a markup toolbar. find the capital T. It's a typing tool. Anywhere on my screen, give it a click and tell me, how'd you do? How did you do with the exercise? How did you do with building blocks? Did it make sense? Did it not make sense? Just how are you doing? How'd you do? Find it difficult, middle of the road, need more practice? Does it seem familiar to maybe another solution you've worked in? And as you type, I'm going to move things around a bit. Got a big old check mark. Need to recheck the policy. Okay. A lot of greats or goods. Someone said, okay, I got a happy face out there. Yeah, how'd you do? Very helpful to see how all of these fit together and to check our setup. Yes, good, good. And whoever said, need to practice more? Yeah, I get you. I get you. All right. Good. Practice makes perfect. Simple to do, but as to why? Well, hopefully as I'm talking about the different building blocks and what they do, that's given you the understanding of why. Pretty straightforward. Understand the accrual blocks. All right, someone said, good session, would like to have some knowledge on cascade accruals too. I'm going to talk about it. We don't actually do it in the class, but I will tell you a little about it. And I've got a goodie for you. And I'm curious to know, so I'm going to ask you to give me a green check mark or say yes in chat. How many of you, well, you don't even know the question yet, so hold on. How many of you have done accrual configuration, say, in a previous Kronos solution? Green thumb up says yes. Red thumb down says no. So quite a few of you are saying no. A few are saying yes as to kind of what I suspected from some of your questions. But I am going to give you what I found a few years ago when I was teaching another Kronos solution quite regularly. Um, I found the holy grail of understanding accruals. There's an order of operation. So for those of you that have not done any configuration, I'm about to just light your world up. And for those of you that have done configuration, but there have been times when you have been troubleshooting an amount and you can't for the life of you figure out why the balance is off, this is your lucky day. All right, so quite a few of you said no. For those of you that said yes, has that ever happened to you before? Tell me in chat. You've been trying to troubleshoot a balance and for the life of you, you can't figure out why the balance isn't what it's supposed to be. Has that ever happened? I would suspect to see at least one yes. I would seriously suspect that. All right, good folks. I'm going to take away your markup tools. Let me share with you, okay, and I'm going to give everybody this document. Everyone will have this document. I will email it. Now, the detail report is quite handy, agreed, but there's an order of operation. And listen, that order of operation changed my world. It really did. So I want to try to change yours. Let me do a new share. Give me just a moment. Here you go. Take a look at this. Folks, this is actually applicable to workforce dimensions as well. In fact, it's typed up exactly as you would see it behind the scenes in the various keys and settings. But I want you to look at the order of operation. Let's just kind of tick through it for a quick second, and then we'll get back to our regularly scheduled program. But the order of operation is simply this. The amount carried forward from the previous day is first. Take a look. Then the carryover limit. There is a setting. If it's set to true, it looks at the balance limit from the previous day. Grant expiration, restore taking, probation start, end, restart, manual reset, grant, transfer to employee if you're using what are called pools. So a pool's kind of like a little bank. That's probably one of the ways that I think of it. Not a lot of organizations use pools because of tax liabilities, but that's number 9 in the list here. Manual updates, takings, transfers from an employee to the pool, so you donate time or money to a pool. Balance limit. Balance limit's post at beginning of next day if it's set to false. And then balance cascades. All right. That might not make a whole lot of sense to you, but let me show you an example I have. Okay. Obviously, I haven't done my tidy cleanup here since last time I showed this. Take a look. Let's say that today is September 24th of 2016. So we all got a whole lot younger. I hope that you're appreciating that in class. But let's say that the balance was reset to 32 hours. You reset it. So that's what the balance should be. But the employee earns 80 hours on the 24th. So now we're up to 112. The earning limit, we have negative 48 hours. Okay, so there's an earning limit, and it takes your balance down to 64, but we reset the balance to 32, and we did not get the results we expected. So why? It's that order of operation. And for those of you that have done the configuration work before, this might be something you've struggled with. I reset that balance. I don't know why I'm not getting the amount that I set it to. Take a look. Okay? And again, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you this. All right, so the values that you see on the accruals add-on at the bottom of the time card are balances. It does not display various transactions that happened on that date that are used to calculate your balances. So where resets don't give you the expected results, yeah, the accrual detail report can be very helpful. It can help you possibly determine the type of edit to make to get the desired results. But the reset happens first in the order of operation. All subsequent transactions are system generated so they don't go away. And what should you do? And I've probably got markups on the next page. So let me clean them up a little bit. Apologies for you. Actually, reset the balance to 0. If the balance was reset to 32, the employee earned 80, and then an earning limit took away 48 hours. That left us with a balance of 64. All things happened on the same date. I want it to be 32 hours. So resetting to 32 doesn't get me the results because I have subsequent system transactions happening. Reset the balance to 0. The employee gets that 80 hours earned. They've got a carryover limit taken away 48 hours. That gives us the 32 desired. That's your solution, my friends. So I'm going to make sure I've got a document that I will send to each and every one of you for having attended today's session. I will send that out from Knowledge Map Live after the class ends, and I think that is going to be a great tool for you in your arsenal, whether you do configuration work or your HR or benefits, and you're trying to figure out why isn't the balance what I expected it to be. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that, and let's get back into the class. We've got a few more configurations to do. There is an MVP athletic vacation accrual policy that we're going to look at. This is going to be, if you're following along, page 10. It's PDF 12 in your book. And the storyline goes like this. MVP Athletic Vacation Policy allows employees to earn time monthly, but limits how they take the time and carry over the time each year. So this is with adjusting grants and carryovers for the vacation accrual benefits. Storyline. MVP Athletics has proposed that the organization, as MVP Athletics has proposed, the organization's decided to award employees by increasing the vacation grant for any employees that have 10 or more years with the company. So it's those milestones, the tenure. They've also decided to allow a greater amount of vacation time to carry over annually for those longer tenured employees. So we're going to adjust the athletic vacation accrual policy. You can go ahead and log in as Sean Ivan on your tenant. And I'll share my screen with you as well. Once you're in as Sean Ivan, go ahead and make your way to the to setup. So Sean Ivan, and from the main menu down to administration to application setup. Oh dear. All right, hold on just a second. Something's not showing correctly on my screen. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment, try to figure out what the issue is. And I'm pretty sure I have it taken care of. So let me see if I can share my screen now. And Siva, I absolutely agree with you. That accrual detail report, very, very useful. One of my favorite reports. Great for troubleshooting. All right, so now I'm sharing my screen again. And if I make my way out to setup, yep, now you can see it. Perfect. All right, we're going to the accruals folder again. Go ahead and expand it. And we are going to need to create a new date pattern. Okay, we need one for annual on date of hire. So let's go to date patterns. I see I've got an annual on December 31st, but I sure don't have an annual on date of hire, so let's click new. The name of this, annual on date of hire. Our reference date is date of hire. And as to the frequency, it's 1 year. And for everything else on our screen, we'll take the defaults and do a save and return. Because we've talked about date patterns and what they are. Remember, predictable sequences of dates governing when accrual balances are incremented. All right, so I've got a date of hire. That's looking pretty darn good. Let's go ahead and address the limit. Go back to your home icon and give it a click. And in the accruals folder, choose limits. And go ahead and click on new. Click on new. Let's talk a little about limits. 3 types of limits. There's taking, earning, and carryover. Taking and earning limits will govern the balance limits for accruals. Your carryover limits will govern how accruals can limit the amount of time or money or both that I can carry from one interval of time to another. Okay, so for us, we are going to do let me see what my exercise says. It's annual carryover on hire date. That's going to be its name. Annual carryover on hire date, naming the building block for what it does. As to the limit type, it's going to be a carryover limit. And again, date patterns coming into play. So we're going to assign that new one we just created called annual on date of hire. Okay? So before you get out of this, I just want to talk a little bit. I'm going to ask you to at least click Save. Click Save. It'll leave you in the editor. But as to limit types, there was the earning amount limit, so we can limit the amount of accrued time or money regardless of earnings. So I could say, for example, that the amount of accrual leave that can accrue within 6 months, let's say it's 40 hours. Even if the employee takes a specific number of hours, 40 is the maximum amount that can be earned in 6 months. That would be an example of an earning amount limit. You could have an earning balance limit, so I'm going to limit the amount, the balance that can be accrued. So I could say, hey, for a year, your vacation hours, I'm limiting you to 120 hours per year, or maybe that breaks out to 10 hours per month. The carryover limit, so again, beyond but the, what's the word I'm looking for, interval. Beyond the interval of time, I'm limiting the amount of accrued time or money that you can carry beyond the end of an accrual period. So like the example, from the end of the year to the first of next year. There's also what's called cap on earning minus takings. You see that used a lot with governmental agencies, municipalities, that type of thing. The actual amount of time an employee can earn based on the overall time the employee earns and uses. So that's where I cap it, but if you use time, you can earn more time. That's a perfect way to explain it. Where you see this maximum so limit, carry over limit, your maximum limit, maximum forget balance, negative balances. So if you wind up in the hole, and then a minimum amount. All right. Didn't ask you to save anything or change anything. I do want you to look at the type field. See that you can't change it? Once you select a type in the editor and you save, you cannot change the type. You would actually have to start over. You'd have to go out and delete, provided it's not used on a policy. You can go ahead and click return. Now we're going to adjust the accrual policy. I don't know why that's popping up. Okay, so let's go back out to the home icon, drop to accrual policies in the accrual folder, and you're looking for MVP athletic vacation. That too will be on page 2. MVP athletic vacation. You can click on the name to open the editor. All right. So what we're going to do is in the grant area, you notice there's earned monthly on the first, and if you've been with us from 0 to 4 years, you're getting 0.05 hours at the first of the month. It increases to 0.625 if you've been from 5 years on, but we're going to add another tier. So in the grant area, click the plus sign by that second row. That'll give you a third row, and from the drop down, we're going to go ahead and choose, they're listed alphabetically, earned monthly on first. I know that mine is hashtagging out, but you should find yours in your list. Again, listed alphabetically, earned monthly on first, and we're going to set that tier at 10. At 10, and in the amount 0.075. Okay, 0.075. And in the limit area, it has annual on hire date carryover max limit at 80. So we're going to change that up just a little bit. just past the carryover limit, there's a blank field or a field that has 0 in it. We're going to say if you've been with us for 10 years, so put 10 in the first field where it says 0, and then instead of 80 hours, you get to carry over 120. Woohoo! And we're going to go up to the top and update this version and do a save and return. Now that's all we're going to do, but we're going to test it, make sure that it's working. I didn't even pay attention to that. That obviously, I've seen this too many times. I've looked at it too many times. Yeah, I agree. Should be showing me a number of years. It does. It does. See the look, length of service, U.S. MF years of service, years of service. So that's a length of service pulling from the policy. It's there. Maybe I misunderstood you. I don't know. All right. I'm going to keep us moving along. Look at the amount column. Where are you talking about, my friend? I'm sorry. On the grant, at the amount, we're filling in the amounts. Ah, gotcha. 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 All right. I'm going to check into some things after this class is over with our cloud folks. Folks, I'm going to ask you to go ahead, close your accrual policies folder at the top, or the tab at the top. Sign out as Sean Ivan and sign in as Michael Martin. And we'll just do a quick test for Patricia Edwards, who is already assigned the appropriate accrual profile. So sign in as Michael Martin. And once you're signed in from the main menu, go ahead and drop down to Time, to Employee Time Cards. And this time you're going to select Patricia Edwards. Once you're in her time card, we're going to do the date range again. So up at the top, change from the previous pay period to select range, and when it brings up your May calendar, click on May 2019. You know it'll give you your 2019 year. Go to December. Grab December 31st. And then just grab the 2nd of January and click Apply. All right, let's take a look at 1231. I'm going to click it in the time card grid, 1231, and go down to Accruals and take a look at Vacation. And vacation is showing 130 hours and 12 minutes. I'm going to click on Wednesday, January 1st, and vacation is at 120, which it should be, right? We set the carryover limit that if you've been with the company 10 or more years, your carryover is at 120. So very plain, simple, easy validation in this case. Kim, I'm curious to know, do okay with this one? Kim's like, oh my gosh, she's picking on me just because I had one little foul up. No, I'm not picking on you. I just want to make sure you're okay out there. Awesome. Okay, good. Well, listen, we have one more policy to quickly take a look at. And folks, we've been working with, time. But remember, an accrual can be money. So we're going to do this one pretty short and sweet and to the point. If you'll go ahead, sign out as Michael Martin and sign in as Sean Ivan. In your book, if you're following along, this is page 12. It's PDF 14. MVP Athletics has a telephone allowance. But, telecommunication prices are always going up. And so it's made it difficult for managers to use their mobile phones for adjusting employee schedules. So MVP Athletics has decided, hey, we'll increase your telephone allowance. We're going to go from 50 to 75. But that is the maximum you can expense. So if you'll log in as Sean Ivan, we'll take a look at the telephone allowance, and we'll increase it to $75, but you can't go over 75. Once you're logged in as Sean, just go to your main menu, drop down to Administration, to Application Setup, and in the Accruals folder, you're going to go to the Accrual Policies, page 2, of course, and you're looking for MVP Athletic Telephone Allowance, and just click on the name to open the policy. All right, you might notice that there's a grant that happens monthly on the first for $50. Now, we're not going to change the grant. We're going to come down past the limits, past the pay codes, down below the minimum taking and the taking increment. By the way, Kim, that's where I was saying, check on the other policy to make sure that it was set at 2 and 2 for the hours. Right below the line where it says maximum taking limit, a warning amount is set at 50. Let's go ahead and change that to 75. Change it to 75. And then private chat, we're wrapping it up after this. The exercise is easy to follow. So just practice on your own. If you have any questions, be sure and holler at me. Sorry that they're kicking you out of your conference room. All right, coming back to everyone. Monthly taking limit, warning amount at 75. Disallow, we're going to do 75.01. 75.01. And all you have to do is scroll back up to the top and do a save and return after you update this version. We will update it. Okay? So $75 is what they can expense, but not a penny over. All right, very quickly, this policy is already assigned to Michael. Sign out as Sean and sign in as Helen Martin, and we'll just test your configuration out very quick and easy to do. Helen Martin. Tell you, we hired the whole Martin clan. When you get signed in as Helen Martin, go to the main menu, to time, to employee time cards. And you're looking for good old Michael Martin. Okay, Michael Martin. So you can scroll, or you can go over to the far right, just above that vertical scroll bar. There's a funnel icon. If you give it a click, you can say show filter rows. Did y'all know this? Show filter rows. It'll give you a blank cell below all of your columns. And under the employee full name starts with, I'm going to type Martin, comma, space, M-I. It doesn't care about case sensitivity. I'm just going to type Martin, comma, space, M-I and hit return. And boom, just like that, there's Michael. If you click on Michael Martin, it'll take you into his time card. Make sure you're looking at the current pay period. So over on the right, change from previous to current. He's a project time card, so we need to click from the toolbar button on the left, click Add New so we can get a new row. Okay, it's going to give us a slide out panel, and we're going to choose the pay code for telephone allowance. Go ahead and choose telephone allowance and click Apply, and then you'll see that new row. Okay, perfect. I see you're there. Come on over, and on the, let's see, what date shall we use? Let's do for Monday. That's fine. Monday's sale. On the row for telephone allowance, type $76. 76, and always tab out of the cell and try to save your work. It should not let you because you can't go over $75. In fact, it even tells you, can't make the edit. $76, nope. We can do 75, we can do 75, but not a penny over it. And that's a quick, easy way to check to ensure that your policy is functioning as it should. Let me come back over into the classroom with you. Where does the time go? I just honestly don't know. Listen, today isn't about doing an extensive accrual setup, obviously. It is about adding to the accrual studies that you've done on Knowledge Map Live, and to give you the opportunity to get in and touch the software a bit. I encourage you to continue to play and practice. I'm going to send everyone that order of operation. It really will help you with troubleshooting once you're live. If you have questions, comments, concerns, Sharad, I believe it was you or perhaps Siva that was asking about cascades, I'd be happy to talk with you a little about that. It's not dealt with in this class. So drop me an email if you like, and that's open to anyone. In the meantime, I hope that the rest of your business day goes well. Feel free to explore your tenant. Try a policy or two in the tenant from your own organization. Be sure and take a trip back out to Knowledge Map Live. We always ask your feedback. in a survey, but also uh, now available once I take admission, attendance, you can get a certificate of completion. And I think what I'll do is maybe go get some more coffee. Obviously, my coffee wasn't very strong this morning. Get out of here. Have a great day. Thank you for attending, and happy chronosing one and all. I appreciate your attention today. Thank you, everybody. You bet. And by the way, y'all are too kind. There's my email. All right, watch for an email from me with that order of operation, and be sure and grab your certificate of completion. Drop me an email if I can do anything to help. Have a great day, everybody.